see an occasional balloon floating around, but when the balloons start dropping later on tonight, look
Just
out.
a few random ones have escaped.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Winterland Ballroom. Well, they tell us that this is the last concert and the last night of Winterland because, well, not because people don't want it, because construction regulations refuse to permit the building to stand any longer. So while we still can, let us let the blues ring out in this fine, fine concert hall. And welcome from Rock Island, Illinois, the blues band of Joliet, Jake, and Elwood Blues, the Blues Brothers.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a public service announcement to let you know that during this stream there will be some emotion, there will be some words used that people might find offensive. This stream is intended for adult, awake, fully thinking and critically aware adults only. If you enjoy browsing social media and you enjoy trying to figure out the mysteries that social media has to offer for you, this stream is not for you. This stream is not for you.
The rules, protect yourself at all times. Follow my instructions. Keep it clean, touch gloves if you wish, let's do it.
Sweaty palms.
This is so crazy. Like goosebumps. This is so crazy. I feel so nervous. Like, what in the world, man?
Just one more opportunity to turn back and head back to safety, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if you enjoy social media and all the mysteries and dramas that it has to offer for you, your best bet is to just go back and enjoy the show. Otherwise, strap in, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure that you take very calculated drinks of your favorite caffeinated or uncaffeinated beverage and enjoy the show. Thanks for being here. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the back of a garage. Social media is a trap for your mind. There's no way through. You must log off and delete the apps. That's the reality, because we are being governed by podcast actors. And there are ways to see through those podcast actors, because podcasters are not real people. A podcaster has no expertise they bring to bear and believes everyone they meet. A podcaster cannot make progress over time because a podcaster is focused on learning new things. And a podcaster believes in their sponsors' products more than their own judgment on reality. This is very easy, ladies and gentlemen. Once you start to see through the illusion of the theater, it becomes very easy. And that's why I finally feel confident enough to have put down all of the money and deposits necessary to teach a course live August 21st, 22nd, and 23rd in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. You are invited. There will be information very soon, including on local hotels and the individual program. But to suffice it to say that we will be hitting home runs for several hours, and then we will get together for dinner, and then we will hit home runs for several hours afterward. You and your children are trapped in a national security theater. There is no way through. You've just got to log off. I think it's really important to understand that. What? Go. Gigaohm Biological is not a podcast. It is a way out. And this has started to be much more to me in the past few weeks that I've been repeating it to myself in this room. It means even more to bring it to you today, given what I have been given. It is a long struggle that we have been in. It's been a long struggle for me to try and explain what's going on here, but I'm starting to get the hang of it. It's the amount of invested time and my motivation, only limited by the amount of inhibition. Maybe, humility is a form of inhibition, but also meddling and liars and salaries and this kind of thing can also be inhibition to getting to a result. And don't think I'm taking credit for this quote. Knowledge is like a nail. It is made load-bearing by being driven in. If it's not driven in deep enough, it will break under any weight. And I really think that the national security theater, under whose spell we have fallen, is a cognitive structure built without any load-bearing requirements. In other words, the mythologies that we have come to believe and accept are actually mythologies that aren't required to bear any real they're not really load-bearing knowledge, and in fact they're protected from bearing any real load, and that's how the national security theater is sustained. And now all you need to do is understand that podcast actors have been scripted to sustain this cognitive structure by simply not requiring it to bear any real load in terms of supporting any real working assumptions. I want you to think carefully if you can find another podcast that talks even remotely like this, identifying anything remotely like this, and that's because podcasters cannot do that. And that's because this is not a podcast. This is a biologist and a father, a husband, and a American trying desperately to understand what's going on under the working assumption that what is presented to us on social media is a national security theater. Now, that is the overwhelming and most important working assumption of this podcast, streaming, broadcast thing that you're listening to here. Even I am still trapped in the slave speak, but let me assure you, I'm not and am not a podcaster. That's not a real job. That's just not a real job. Those aren't real people. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gigaohm Biological. Biology is the way. Life is a pattern. Integrity. RNA cannot pandemic. Intramuscular injection is dumb. Transfection is a crime. Population pyramids are real and motivate governments. Podcasters are not real, and they follow scripts. If you stay focused on the biology, you don't take the bait on social media, and you love your neighbor, I think America and the West can get out of this. Not scot-free, not without pain, but we can come out on the other side with our grandchildren not enslaved. There's lots of different motivations. Rui in the chat understands very well that another motivation is the natural resources are finite, and that is true. It's a very big motivation for the management of the population pyramid. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a 2-day discussion about this in person, where all of these things can be discussed in person, and we together can work on sharpening our own understanding of it. That's why I encourage you to block off this time and be sure that you are available, if at all possible, in person. What are we going to discuss in this thing? Well, what we would discuss is how to move on from bad biology 101. That's how we would. That's what we would discuss in a course like this. And so I'm giving it away. I'm asking people to steal this, but they can't, see, because together all of these ideas amount to a wholly different direction in terms of our biological understanding of ourselves and the pursuit of it. And so first we have to recognize that modern biology assumes the central dogma rather than testing it. While it has never been proven beyond its most basic formulation, this is one of the central reasons to have this weekend biology course, and one of the central messages for potentially the high school teachers that would attend this course, because this central dogma is taught as if it has already been proven by every high fidelity possible measurement there is, when in reality it is just a working assumption, and it is not any load-bearing knowledge. In other words, if you use it as a working assumption instead of testing it, then effectively it is it bears no load in terms of knowledge. You just kind of move on. And so instead of what you think is a ever, higher tower of understanding, it's actually just a mid-level studio apartment that has, the wrong number on the door and a fake elevator outside of it. And you really think that progress has been made in terms of this skyscraper, and it has not. We have to identify new foundations for our molecular and systemic complexity on which to base these models of understanding. And that's really what 3 and 4 are about. We have to reimagine the immune system as a molecular and cellular interface with our own microbiome. And that microbiome might actually include, as counterparts, some of the intracellular organelles that cannot be explained by mutation and natural selection, but instead are probably some evidence of endosymbiosis or some kind of different sort of mechanistic emergence of complexity that has nothing to do with the simple, very stupid, simple ideas of DNA heredity, DNA-based heredity, and that being the foundation for evolution from single cell to human. That's just preposterous, of course. And reimagining development as an opportunity for optimization and maximization of inherited potential is probably something that the Maha movement can incorporate in some disingenuous way, but only in the context of these other ideas, and more importantly, framing it in the context of the thoughtful Americans who probably were very aware that this is a pretty good list of ideas, and were somehow or another subverted from those ideas ever going from generation to generation. And instead, some other set of ideas has been passed on to our children. That includes me. And as a biologist, that's what I think is most important here. I have the requisite expertise from the time I was a child, watching birds with my long past grandmother, God rest her soul, all the way up until the time when my name was on the screen of a Nobel Prize lecture for a brief second or two. This is not a joke to me. This is not a social media party for me and my family. These people have come to my house, and they have meddled with my marriage and my family and my wife. And I believe that from the perspective of trying to understand how we are being governed and how vulnerable social media makes us all, my own personal story throughout the pandemic is a great way to see And all you need to do is think about the fact that anybody that fits my general category of person, where I have a professional expertise that I bring to the table, that I make intellectual progress in my messaging and in my understanding, and over time I have come to see the world as being governed by a theater. That progression is so incredibly rare that I only know of one person on earth that engages in social media, that tries to communicate in this form of communication, and has come to on a very similar timeline, and that's Mark Kulak of Housatonic ITS, Housatonic Live in Boston, Massachusetts. There's nobody else. And that holds true for all the content of this podcast stream thing that I'm trying to do. And I'm desperate to get my mind around the idea not to use the word podcast, but in the context of these people, it's important to hear it. Podcast. They use it on purpose because, again, if you understand what the word means and what it doesn't mean, then you will see it immediately. None of these people are doing it, what they say they're doing. They're not making progress in any way. And none of these people can ever point to a resume like I can that will show you an unblemished record of integrity. Now, we can look at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we can look at Aaron Seary, we can look at Brett Weinstein, we can look at somebody as like Kevin McKernan, we can look at Jessica Rose, we can look at Claire Craig of Heart, we can look at all of these people in this fake conservative movement on X, and we can clearly see that for the duration of the pandemic, and for many of them in the years leading up to the pandemic, they don't have a real story. They don't have a real career. They don't have a real trajectory in life. And in fact, a lot of them try very hard to obfuscate that previous trajectory in life and in their understanding of reality, and try to go short through the corner with regard to their origin stories. And surprisingly, many of their origin stories are actually intertwined before the pandemic. That's why Sasha Latipova, for example, her daughter was podcasting with Nick Fuentes in 2019, right before she threatened the life of the YouTube CEO and right before she would be promoted on Alex Jones. These things in isolation, again, could be seen as coincidences, but when there are actually hundreds of these things over the course of the last 8 years, and they all involve the same group of people promoting one another as good or bad, it can only be seen as a theater. And so I urge you to keep your mind open if this is the first time that you've been here. My name is JJCouey. I come to you live out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In the back of my garage is a picture of me taken in Norway in 2011 on the fjords there while I was fishing for mackerel with a couple friends of mine. That's actually a cod eyeball, if I remember correctly, that was just pulled out of a live fish, and then my wife made this photograph, which is kind of a cool photograph. That's me in Norway on my 4-patch setup. I was a patch clamper for a very long time, a Nobel Prize winning electrophysiological measurement technique invented by Erwin Nair and Bert Sackman. The award was given in 1991, so I was kind of late to the party with regard to this technique, but that allowed me to cross paths with somebody like Henry Markram, who is quite infamous for the Blue Brain Project, the largest neuroscience or any science project ever funded by the EU. I worked with him, even he would definitely know who I was and my name if he saw me again. Anyway, I went to the University of DePaul in Chicago after high school. One of the stupidest choices I ever made, because of course that resulted in a lot of student loans, and those student loans are awful. And of course ridiculous, because I could have gone to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where a lot of other high school graduates of mine went, but I was such a tired of being in northern Wisconsin, little kid, that I thought that, I'm going to go where nobody else goes. I'm going to go to a big city, and who cares if I have to spend a lot of money, because I'm going to go to med school and pay it all off. And that didn't really work out. Instead, I found myself teaching high school and trying to reapply to medical school that I got waitlisted on several times, including the medical school Rush Presbyterian, where Tony Bark worked at the time, which is a really interesting coinkydink. I then found myself working at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago as a pharmacy technician for a couple years at the night shift. That was kind of fun. And eventually I found myself as a bartender at Shuba's, because this was the most lucrative way to make money. And certainly the schedule is also quite spectacular. That's a long story. That didn't work out. Long story short, though, I did eventually move away from Chicago. I went to Amsterdam. I did my PhD there. I met my wife there. We moved to Norway. We had 2 kids there. We moved back to the Netherlands to try and get tenure. And then we found ourselves in Pittsburgh right before Trump was elected. I actually tried to vote for Trump, but I hadn't registered locally, and so I couldn't vote. But I went in, and thought I was going to vote at my kids' elementary school, and then was told I couldn't because I'm not registered yet. Anyway, I didn't vote, but I would have voted for Trump, thinking that I was just throwing a little wrench into the thing, not thinking that I was buying into a theater or anything like that. Anyway, I understand it very differently now. If you want to understand that part of my life, you can actually go on PubMed and just put my last name and my first 2 initials in, and actually most of what I did between that picture and these pictures will just show up there as work. That, first and foremost, is something that you can't say for anyone else that you watch as a podcaster. You actually can't say that. There's no other podcaster that you watch on the internet that can say what I just said, or has tried to say what I just said about themselves, and end with their career being available on this website right there. No one else will say it. Brett Weinstein won't say it. Eric Weinstein won't say it. Jordan Peterson won't say it. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. won't say it. Mary Holland won't say it. Meryl Nass won't say it. Robert Malone definitely won't say it. Stephen Hatfield can't say it. There's not a person that anyone pays attention to on the internet that can say that without actually exposing themselves for what? For having made no progress. Because starting at the beginning of the pandemic, this is where I was at the University of Pittsburgh as a research assistant professor. And I was tricked into becoming part of this group on X that was predominantly Indian actors. I didn't understand that at the time, but I understand it that way now, including the paper about the HIV inserts, which was Indian. After participating in that for a little while, the diffuse proposal came out, and I knew immediately it was fake. So I started saying it, and I got out of drastic. That's when Charles Rixey and Kevin McKernan started contacting me. And 1 month after, or a few weeks after, Kevin McKernan insisted on coming on my stream to talk about RNA and stuff, Charles Rixey came to my house and did a stream with me. I've also had, of course, lots of other people on my stream during that year, including Jessica Rose and Meryl Nass and Bodwin and Sasha Latipova and Mary Talley Bowden, all of whom have gone on for the last 4 years as podcast actors and as Substack authors to be the beneficiaries of thousands and thousands of laundered dollars and Bitcoin and other crap that they do. And I've tried to change all of their minds 4 years ago. And since those 4 years ago, I have made significant intellectual progress. And they are still where they were during 2021 and 22 when I interacted with all of them on Signal and Telegram and in Steve Kirsch's steering committee, which is just a group of those people. What I'm trying to suggest to you is America and the West has been sabotaged by a social media theater, and these actors coordinate their drama and opposition to one another and absorb as uselessly as possible any meaningful any meaningful progress that are made by people that are actually just trying to do their best to figure it out. That's me. And so I have been allowed to present my ideas to the Corona Investigative Committee twice, maybe three times to Panda, who lost all of the presentations that I gave to them, the Canadian COVID Care Alliance, also the National Citizens Inquiry twice. I also presented to the board of the wellness company. That was a long time ago. I was employed by Children's Health Defense that I now will declare and would swear on oath in a court of law that that is a sabotaged, fraudulent organization. And you can see it because their intellectual stance on things is disingenuous because there's no progress made. And I'm going to prove this to you very, very conclusively today with a very simple argument. I was employed also to help Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and a huge staff of people prepare a book called The Wuhan Cover-Up, which I now understand to be a kind of exemplar as to how this kind of national security theater and unwitting actors are set up to play a role on stage. Specifically, they intended me to be the lab leak expert and to tout this book as evidence of my professional expertise instead of coming out, as I'm coming out now and have been coming out for several years, that this book is a fraud because I taught them the biology that should be in the book. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that's for the next book. And of course, that was 3 years ago. And here we are now with them sabotaging my government, pretending that a Maha movement is real and ignoring all the progress that should have been made. This is bad. And so it's not just this. I've presented a lot of times to a doctor's dissident group. I presented once at the Red Pill Expo where a lot of these scripted actors were also present. And also, since meeting me in 2024, now it's 2026, they've made no progress. And I presented 2 more times after that to that same group, still no progress. I presented one time to the other broken path of that group, still no progress. So I've decided to just go out on my own. And I'm trying very hard to get in good enough shape as a basketball player so that I can teach this kind of biology on the basketball court instead of, being trapped only here, which is okay because it's necessary, but it is not quite as fun as being on the basketball court and editing those videos. And so I'm trying to make stupid work for me, but that's taking longer than I thought because I'm 54 years old and getting back into shape enough to not be ashamed of myself has taken a lot longer than I thought. And then I took December off, and then I got stabbed in my, it's starting to bleed. I got stabbed in my finger, my hand, and that was a few days ago, and that put me back a little bit, but now I'm okay. And so this is a really long introduction. What's going on here? It is a way out. And it's not necessarily going to feel good. That's one thing I've got to warn you about right now. There is a recent event that happened that I don't think will be visible to anybody on social media, but it's visible to me, and precisely because it's intended only to affect me. And I've debated a long time about whether I should show these things or not, but I think in order to justify my stance, in order to also make this crucial argument that I want to make, I've got to show you the entirety of my experience with this particular person. Now, I have been very clear over a few of the past weeks that I think that this book right here is
from everything I've read is that this RNA exists. You can capture it, you can sequence it, you can move it to other cells and recapitulate disease.
I would say that this book and the people that are involved in promoting it or now not promoting it, this book and my role in it, my role or lack of role at CHD, and his role in the pandemic narrative on social media for 6 years, that's Kevin McKernan up there, these things all make me jackpot correct. That there is a group of people out there that's pretending to oppose each other, argue each other, discuss things that by listening to them solve the mystery, you will accept every single thing that they want you to accept in terms of working assumptions, and you will effectively be fighting nothing. You will believe in nothing, therefore you can fall for anything. And so my goal is to teach you enough biology so that you can see how ridiculous it is where we are and why these people haven't made any progress. Now, one of the worst actors in this that doesn't really have any relevance for the biology, with the exception of the use of placebo to greatly reduce the cornucopia, what should have been a cornucopia of side effects and off-stream effects and detrimental effects of transfecting a huge population, and misconstruing it with different batches and stuff like that, which is now being promoted years later. Remember, she was doing this person was doing the batch thing in 2022. And in fact, here she is still pinned on X, her discussion with our HHS secretary in 2022 about the batches. And the batches are now, of course, a story that's being promoted exclusively in Germany by Sukrit Bhakti, who said that I was right about RNA camp pandemic, but since we already know it, why do we need to talk about it anymore? Oh, darn it. Sometimes that thing just doesn't quite work right, and I don't know why. And so there's another person, lots of other people that we've talked about before. Let me see if it works now. Yep. And one of those people that I have, for the most part, kept off of my background questionable people slides is Thomas Binder. But I noticed that Thomas Binder was retweeting Sasha Latipova and Ahmed Malik of the UK very recently, and I took issue with it. I just think it's bullshit. If you or your account is used to promote these people now in 2026, I think you must either not be on the internet, which is a possibility. Thomas Binder could have long ago agreed to have his likeness used, and this could be him as represented by some third party, or it could really be him. But the gist of it is very simple, and it looks like on X that I'm just a dickhead. The fact is, Thomas Binder has made no progress. He cannot say intramuscular injection is dumb, the word transfection at all, supplementary oxygen or opioids, and the population pyramids means he's a scripted fraud. Sorry to disappoint, but there's no other explanation. Now, this in and of itself looks really lame. It looks like I'm such a mean guy. Like, why am I on the internet if this is all I have to say in all caps? But he somehow just responds, which is interesting, right? Intramuscular injection of, for example, Valium through the clothes saved me from madmen on several occasions while on the emergency duty. Interesting. It looks like you fell for it. Finally, an MD fell for the trap that has been out there for a long time now. He also called them vaccines when they weren't. That's true, he did. But then at some point he's also used mod RNA transfections, but I noticed that. And I've been pointing it out to him for a while, but he doesn't really care. Now, again, if you just were on X and this is all the best algorithm fed you, then you would probably think, wow, what a creep this Jonathan Couey is. Isn't it unbelievable? It's like, just because they don't say your exact words, they're traitors. Of course, there's a lot more to this than these 3 tweets, and so I would just like to share some of that with you now, and it's still not the teachable moment. We're getting there, though, so hang on to your pantyhose, because this is going to hurt. And so if we just go through the experience that I've had behind the scenes with Thomas Binder just over the last year, I don't want to take it all the way back, because if I take it all the way back, it's like a 4-hour show. But let me assure you, when I finally am done with my book, it will be taken all the way back to the beginning, and these patterns will be visible. So here, I'm just showing you my personal messages with Thomas Binder's account, and I say that strongly because I just sometimes don't think this is Thomas Binder. his account on X. And so I'm starting with April 2025 and the end of a comment that he sent to me because it just wouldn't fit on here. It doesn't matter. The rest of this is irrelevant because he's just telling me how great I am. He says, by the way, I sometimes listen to your podcast. Interesting admission. And you state that no one had explained the RT-PCR testing pandemic right from the start. This is wrong. Section E of our addendum was mainly written by me. Now, first of all, what is he talking about there? Thomas Binder is talking about a paper that was written in, I think, 2021, but it could have even been 2020, where Thomas Binder, Mike Eden, Claire Craig, Jessica Rose, and Kevin McKernan are on a dumb paper about PCR that actually doesn't really say anything useful about PCR being inappropriate as a diagnostic. Instead, it made arguments that included the now very debunked and very ridiculous argument that overcycling is a problem. And it's a priority problem. And so the interesting thing is you can go to Section E in the addendum and you're going to see that there's nothing in there about nested primers. There's nothing in there about sequencing the amplicon. There's nothing in there about how is PCR used to create a high fidelity measurement on the academic biological bench, but not in the context of a COVID or any other viral test. And that is the trick. And so I responded, I will correct this error. But of course, after I looked into addendum E, I realized that's not what they say. And that's what I'm saying, is that there is a way to use PCR to a very high level of fidelity and be very sure that what you are showing is real, but it would require an enormous amount of work, an enormous number of positive and negative controls, all of which are not involved in a simple COVID test product. And it's pretty remarkable that in 2025, after all the years of saying it, he watches my podcast, but he hasn't caught that message and instead wants me not to say that he didn't say it. So I said I would correct it, but I don't think you are wrong, but you and your co-authors were very misled by McKernan and Craig. Can you tell me how the authors were assembled? So I'm trying to understand how it is that Kevin McKernan, Claire Craig of the 100,000 Genomes Project, Jessica Rose, random virology postdoc something or other, where I don't even know where she was, in Israel, and Kevin McKernan of the Human Genome Project in the Whitehead Institute, and Mike Eden of Pfizer all get on the same important paper, which is actually bullshit, about the PCR in 2020 or 2021. And he says, thanks, bro. I guess the main authors just asked other known COVID dissidents like me to participate. Now, don't forget, this isn't just any COVID dissident. This is the doctor in Switzerland who was supposedly thrown in a psychiatric ward. And so these PCR guys just thought that maybe the guy who got thrown into a psychiatric ward would like to be on a paper. Does that even make any sense? If he was thrown in a psychiatric ward during COVID, don't you think that would be the most important message that he would have? And this PCR paper, which isn't even his expertise, why would he be in there? Why would he be writing the addendum? This guy is not a PCR guy. He's a cardiologist. Thanks, bro. Really? And so that was April of 2025. Then we bounce forward to June of 2025, when I'm being encouraged by regular guy, a guy who I know now to be a meddler and a liar, a former somebody in the government, a lawyer, was trying to get me to sue the lawyer that hooked me up with this chick. And this chick was on the bus of CHD and was a medical coder and said my name, JJCouey, out loud as part of some fake case run by an Indian lawyer in California. Can't make this shit up, so I have to make sure I show you exactly what's going on here. So he's promoting this person who's on the CHD bus after years of me saying CHD is bullshit, after years of me saying this stuff. He knows, but he's promoting her. So what do? I say, hey, dude, this person has been selected to step in front of me. She says my name, JJ, and then says nothing more about me. You can't see that? She is taking my discoveries and claiming they are hers. This lady doesn't work with me and has never spoken to me, but I did the work in the case that she was talking about. I provided all the evidence, and then they brought in Dave Raznick, you know, the AIDS guy, the multiple chromosomes is cancer guy, and this chick, and did podcasts about the case. And then regular guy said that I should sue her. I should stop podcasting and I should sue her. Jeff Meineke told me to sue that lawyer that organized this whole thing for malpractice. And that would be the way forward. Stop podcasting and sue the Indian lawyer in California who botched the case on COVID testing in California. And I told him, this is a fake person. And she was not being promoted by just anybody in that particular tweet. She was being promoted by the Corbett Report. You know, the guy that pushed Bill Gates as the ultimate bad guy, even though he's an idiot. The Corbett Report, who's been on with CHD and Meryl Nass a number of times. The Corbett Report. And so she was on the Corbett Report saying my name, but didn't say anything else. Just took it all the credit for herself. This case is really big, but that case is gone. It's destroyed because the Indian lady's an idiot. And maybe they were just torpedoing the case of a good cop. I don't know. I don't care. Because I know it's fake. Because I met regular guy, that lawyer that told me to sue that other Indian lawyer. I met him through Piper Stover, who was, of course, streaming right before the pandemic with the former ambassador to India, Richard Verma. And so he says, Jonathan, many people say what I said. I'm careful with judging people and do care more for what they say and what they do. He watches my podcast. He cares for what they say and what they do, but I'm telling him that these people are meddling with my family. Look, then I say this, these people all came to my house. They text my wife. They sometimes threaten me. This isn't a social media thing for my family, Thomas. You are casually promoting someone you don't know. I'm involved in a real court case where I discovered the means by which the sequencing was done and proved them wrong with the right questions. Now the lady is obfuscating that evidence with her own book pitch, promoted by CHD on their bus and also the Corbett Report. Just like any other case in the U.S., this one will probably be sabotaged, just like the case of Scott Shara and Grace was sabotaged. This case on PCR testing for cops was sabotaged. They use naive people on social media to promote these performers to their herds, and they do it willingly, wittingly or unwittingly. No response from Thomas Binder until October of 2025, where he says, hey, bro, where can I find out how to support you? Best, Thomas. Does this make sense to you? Does this seem like a timeline of a guy who went from being involved in a paper with some of the COVID dissidents in 2020 about the PCR test to how can I support you in 2020? What? How can you support me by stop promoting these frauds and instead promote my show? But he never done it. He promotes theirs all the time, including Sasha Latipova and Ahmed Malik. In fact, then I tweeted what I showed you today, and his response, there's the October 25th one you can see up here where he offers me money. And then now today, he says, oh dear, go outside and enjoy some nature, Jonathan. So I replied to him. I said, intramuscular injection is dumb, and specifically why immunization is biologically wrong. Vaccine is a meaningless word, whereas transfection is what the pandemic shots were and remain. Health freedom is not fighting for truth, but for lies. You went from offering me money to promoting fraudulent Americans and scripted clowns from the UK who've saved no one from these ideas. I'm going to take the solace in the possibility that your account is being used against me and the rest. If you want to discuss this further, I'd be happy to host you as a guest again. And he responded with his little bullshit tweet that I showed you earlier, and I promote nobody. Sometimes I share a tweet that almost nobody can see as I'm shadow banned. But Ahmed is an honest guy, and Sasha probably as well. That's the message that he sent to me in private. But in public, he's trying to dunk on me. Oh, I guess in 2021 he did say a broad application of experimental mRNA is against the Nuremberg Code. Okay, I guess he did. But he didn't say why. He didn't say why they would do it. He doesn't understand population pyramids because he put a question mark on it. And he's dismissing me now. He's taking the opportunity to dismiss me instead of respond correctly to the idea that that's a wrong answer. Intramuscular injection of pure chemicals with known molecular targets and known mechanisms of action is not immunization. Immunization is the injection of a combination of substances intramuscularly in the intent of doing something that they can't. And he must, as a MD, know that, right? He's not this stupid, or is he? Or is the user of his account that dumb? Now, I want you to think about this very carefully because you are trapped in a national security theater, and I want you to understand how stupid it is. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and see if you can follow something that is, it's hard for me to write down, and I don't even have a pen to do it, do I? Because these are all dry. Shoot. I have to walk briefly off to get a regular ballpoint pen because all of my writing... Oh, no, I have one, of course. Sorry about that. I do have one. I do have one. I would love to... Let's test... Okay, so let's just see very carefully here. One of the interesting arguments that was made, let me see if I can first do this. And then put this one back up. And then I'll go dink and dink. And so this should be right. No, this should be right. There we go, and there we go, and then there we go, right? Yes, okay. So if I put this slide back up, one of the responses to this tweet here that disappeared was a response that said, just because people don't use your words doesn't mean that they're traitors. Another response to this guy's answer was, I don't know, lame or something like that, meaning I guess that what I'm saying is lame. But I want you to hear an interesting, I want you to try to clear your mind and absorb this this analogy. It's hard for me to teach this because I just came up with it on the dog walk today, and it's a little bit raw. I mean, I'm a little bit worried about where it might go if people don't understand what I mean. I want you to think about it being 1943. And I want you to think about Gigaohm Biological in 1943 saying the following. I want you to think of this hypothetical. In 1943, Gigaohm Biological says the work camps are death camps. And he also says the Nazis are murdering Jews. I want you to think about Gigaohm Biological being able to go back in time and broadcast from 1943 and say the work camps are death camps and the Nazis are murdering Jews. And then I want you to imagine that a whole bunch of people in the United States will say that Jonathan Couey is using really shitty language. He shouldn't be talking like that. It's okay to say that the Nazis are National Socialists and are actually fascists. It's okay to say that the Nazis are against free speech and burn books. It's okay to say that Nazis are into segregation. It's okay to say all of those things. But let's not go too far and say that the Nazis are murdering Jews. let's not go too far and say that the work camps are death camps. Now, if anybody took that stance, would you consider them just, trying to do their own thing or fight for their own thing? Or would you realize that, wait a minute, if somebody has made the progress to the point where we know and can say it this way, why would we complain about burning books? Why would we complain about free speech if the Nazis are actively murdering Jews, and the smoke that's coming from the work camp, just down the road from your house, that's actually them murdering Jews? But we don't want to say that. We just want to say that Hitler's a bad guy and that Hitler's doing, burning books, and Hitler's controlling the schools. And we want to fight for freedom. I want you to understand that if people don't talk about 1 million Americans being killed by opioids on the street, it's the equivalent to not actually saying that the Nazis are murdering Jews, but just saying that the Nazis are burning books. Just say that the Nazis are against free speech. I don't have to say what you say, Jay. If you don't say that the Nazis are murdering Jews, but you just say they're against free speech, you're a frickin' traitor, especially if we get to 1946 and you're still talking about the burning books and trying to make a longer list of the books that were burnt. Trying to make a retrospective list of all the times when free speech was encroached upon by the Nazis, you would effectively be working as a traitor. And I don't think there's any better way to show that these people are traitors than that way and that way alone. As long as they are not talking about murder, as long as they are not talking about the population pyramid, and as long as they aren't making any progress in understanding that hypodermic injection is not one methodology, but it is many, depending on where you actually inject it and what you inject, then these people are the equivalent of, fighting against the Nazis without actually telling you what they're really doing. Just like saying that there were 6 million Nazis, 6 million Jews were killed, without saying that you would never just kill 6 million people. You would use them for experiments too. It's all one malevolent show. And once you understand that just because what we thought we knew about them is wrong doesn't mean what we are is wrong. America was a good idea. And it has taken 250 years to sabotage it. And I, as a mudblood American, am here to tell you that it's very easy to see how it's being sabotaged. It is not by lying, it is about having the wrong priorities. Because that's what I'm trying to illustrate here. It's not lying if you say the Nazis were against free speech. It's not lying if you say they burnt libraries of books. It's just the wrong priority if they were burning Jews. It's really the wrong priority if the work camps were actually experimental medical experimentation camps that ended in murder. And so I don't know if there is a better podcast on the internet besides me and Mark Kulak, but I think there are only two right now that are actually lifting the lid on this, opening the hood on this and showing you how it runs. And this is how it runs. And it doesn't need to be that Thomas Binder understands it. It doesn't even need to be that this is Thomas Binder. But what you need to see is that by saying intramuscular injection of Valium through my clothes saved me multiple times, the person who's running this account doesn't understand that they just stepped on a rake and the handle of the rake just hit them square in the face and broke their nose. Because that is exactly what I'm saying. Intramuscular injection is dumb, with exceptions. And any doctor should already know that and understand that from a biological perspective, from a pharmacological perspective, from a molecular mechanistic perspective. And yet somehow or another, this scripted account doesn't seem to get it, that they literally walked into a trap that I have been repeating over and over for at least a year, waiting for someone with an MD to fall in it. And who fell in it? Unfortunately, a guy who was on that original PCR paper with the 100,000 Genomes Project director and pathologist Claire Craig, the former research and development director of a working group in the Human Genome Project, Kevin McKernan, Jessica Rose, a complete fraud, and Mike Eden, the guy who went from Pfizer and natural immunity and lots of viruses to there are no viruses at all to, yeah, there are, but there aren't, or whatever he is. All frauds. And unfortunately, if you look at my individual messages from this guy and you look at his unblemished record of retweeting and promoting all of these clowns that are behind the Maha movement in America, there's no other way to see it. He's a scripted clown. He's a traitor, or his account is being used against us. That's it. And so again, I'll just flash these up on the screen really quick so you can see, in case you want to stop and pause it on any of these, just so you can see it. And you know, these podcasts where this Professor Zhang are on, or Scott Ritter, or where's Jeffrey Sachs down there? It's crazy. They're all going to be podcasting each other now. This dude is especially amazing. He has so many. He's got a couple AI versions of himself on YouTube. He's got a couple clips channels, and then he's got this main one, which is like predictive history. And this guy has just been on like Jimmy Dore for 2 hours and Kim Iverson for an hour, and other people are covering him on other podcasts. And then he's also been on that Deason thing. And this is all the same thing. It's all the same bullshit. Here's Health and Home with the Malones. Health and Home with the Malones, an Epoch Times special podcast. And it's weird, right? When would it be appropriate in the last 7 years for there to be an Epoch Times podcast series titled Health and Home with the Malones? I ask that question sincerely. When in the last 7 years would there be a time where it would be appropriate for this podcast to exist, given the fact that we apparently have a multi-generational genetic disaster on our hands because so many people have been exposed to the SV40 insert? Let's move forward with this. So this is Robert Malone, right? I'm going to move my head down a little bit. Robert Malone is the documented whistleblower in the Jesse Gelsinger story in the New York Times, etc. He spoke to The Who about fill and finishes technology for the flu and vaccines in 2019 or something like that before handing the mic to Rick Bright. He's a self-proclaimed lead in the domain program that was actually a DITRA program. His good friend is the head of DITRA there. Name is escaping me for 1 second. It'll come back to me later. Self-proclaimed significant contributor to the idea of gene therapy, which it's really not. It's transfection. In his original publications, I think there's at least 7 of them, all use that word in the title, which is, of course, there's an intellectual property reason why everybody has been very well scripted to say gene therapy or mod RNA, because they don't want you to know that transfection is an old methodology that's been used for years and years and years on the academic bench. Bioethics expert who also spoke out about aspects of the COVID stuff, apparently. He's a lead guest in every Senator Ron Johnson Senate meeting since the beginning of the pandemic, which is not insignificant. He's done multiple podcast appearances with Stephen Hatfill, sometimes doing as many as 9 podcasts a day, according to his wife. Appeared on stage in Romania with Stephen Hatfill and many of these clowns that have personally interacted with my family. He has also appeared on stage with Sasha Latipova, Asim Malhotra, and Meryl Nass at the same time in January of 2023 in Stockholm, Sweden, where apparently a lot of people were ready to be saved. He also brought Whitney Webb to the inaugural CHD conference in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2022, which is an extraordinary thing to figure into your equation. Now, I think he's responsible for everything that Jayanta Bhattacharya has ever done because Robert Malone works for India. That's why he has an Indian lion on the wall behind him. I think that's also the reason why he developed a vaccine in India, why he's been associated with a lot of Indian things for a very long time, including all the way back to the hero of Indian biology and genetics, Inder Verma. I think it's very, very possible that America is being subverted by a number of Indian agents, whether or not they're working on behalf of India, which I find very preposterous, or they're working on behalf of some other, shadowy organization of overclass people, which I think is much more likely. He is responsible for all of these people in some way or another. This is one of the arch traitors in America. Robert Malone is a gigantic fraud, but more importantly, all of the visible opposition on the internet to Robert Malone are scripted frauds as well, up into and including Sasha Latipova, who first was on stage with him, and then now, more recently, in the darkest corners of the internet, is playing a role in opposing him, including saying things like Maha is a ha-ha on America. I don't know where she would have gotten that from. Anyway, compare and contrast the video behind me, which is obviously about pruning trees, and think about when it would be appropriate for that video to exist, that podcast and that set of graphics to exist, when in 2021 he was on with Tucker Carlson saying this.
The way that's accessible to non-scientists, I hope you'll tell us, do you have concerns about these vaccines
So
for
these are plums,
people who aren't at great risk?
and they're absolutely starting to
I think that
put in shooters. That
one
we
of
want to
my
try to get
concerns
taken
are
out.
that the government is not being transparent
and
with
up
us
here we have
about what those
peaches.
risks are.
And we
And
got
so,
all of these trees 1 year
I'm of
on
the
sale
opinion
at
that people
Walmart.
have the right
Yeah, so it's a
to
store out
decide
there.
whether
Absolutely.
to.
I might have to turn the volume down on that back video, so let me just tweak that quick. And then I'll start it again. So you can clearly hear what he says on the...
The way that's accessible to non-scientists, I hope you'll tell us, do you have concerns about these vaccines for people who aren't at great risk?
Yes,
And they're
I think that one of my concerns are that the government is not being transparent with us about what those risks are. And so I'm of the opinion that people have the right to decide whether to accept vaccine or not, especially since these are experimental vaccines. This is a fundamental right having to do with clinical research ethics. And so my concern is that I know that there are risks, but we don't have access to the data, and the data haven't been captured rigorously enough so that we can accurately assess those risks. And therefore, for folks like your audience, you and me, we don't really have the information that we need to make.
And of course, we don't have the information we need to make an informed decision is exactly what Robert Malone is out there to do. Exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is scripted unwittingly to do. Exactly what CHD was put in place to do before the pandemic, so that they would be there. It's exactly the reason why Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn were probably killed, to make sure that people like Robert Malone would be able to go out on fake news programs with other actors like Tucker Carlson and pretend that they were blowing the whistle on something, controlling a narrative about a lab leak, so that the vast majority of people would come to believe the pandemic is not only possible, but likely man-made, come to believe the diagnostic scheme of the pandemic to be flawed, but, the next one might be better. And of course, the countermeasures and responses to the pandemic being flawed and need to be better, but not a management of the pyramid of population, not a cover-up of the fact that immunization itself is a kind of useless word until you start talking about where you're putting the thing that you're purporting to use to immunize somebody. And so all of this is by malevolent design. And I would go so far as to say that in 2021, they had no idea that it would be possible for people like Mark Kulak and I to get all the way to the point to where we would say that I would be willing to bet, and I bet Mark Kulak agrees, that Joshua Lederberg was a pretty good guy with a pretty good plan about how to manage the population pyramid and also get the data necessary in coming generations to try to shortcut what otherwise would be a monumentally difficult computer task of cracking the human genome. And that plan has been very unsuccessfully handed off to a generation of clowns that is now pretending as though they are on that same noble and very insightful long-term plan to take, let's say, useful control of the evolution of the species. And now they are just using it to forward their own ends. And that seems to be more or less just to enslave humanity. And so I think it's really important to understand that until you start to really figure out why it is that these people are involved, you'll never be able to understand it, because he's not being blackmailed. He's not being blackmailed. And you cannot understand the behavior of any of these people as being motivated by blackmail or pedophilia or satanic rituals or all this other stuff. That's absurd. The most parsimonious explanation for these people's participation is their connection to weaponized piles of money that are much older than the United States, to families that are much older than the United States, to ideas and groups of people that are older than the United States, so that they themselves can justify pretending to be, but at the same time sabotaging the American idea. That fits perfectly with this man. That fits perfectly with this man. That fits perfectly with so many of these people, it's quite shocking. And the ones that it doesn't fit are people that are clearly set up, clearly paid actors that never make any progress. And so one way or another, you can see it, because the progress that I've made and the progress that Mark Kulak has made over the last 6 years is like the difference between somebody that works out every day for a year and somebody who talks about it. One person's body and mind will change over that course of the year, and that other person will be the same fat slob that they were when they started talking. And that's how you can see a podcast actor for a podcast actor, because if you compared to what they're saying when they started talking to what they're saying now, and there is no progress because they're busy learning new things, because they have no expertise that they are relying on or bringing to the table. Robert Malone is a wonderful way to see through this. Is a wonderful way to see through it because of his connections to this 9/11 actor.
Right. Welcome everyone.
It's impossible to miss the promotion of the ideas on the podcasts and the way that his Substack is used and the amount of material that comes out. It's just impossible for this to be a normal guy with a homesteading, horse breeding business. That's just absurd. But more importantly, his connections and Sasha Latopova's connections to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and CHD mean that this whole show is one big, malevolent, nasty theater. And there's just no other way about it, that the Daily Mail is also promoting the idea that the ticks and stuff are leaked from American Biolabs and quoting Robert Malone's Substack in it. That's just impossible. We are being sabotaged as a country and as a society in the West by a group of actors that is making you believe and making everyone believe that America actually chose Trump, that America actually wants to bomb Iran, that Americans actually believe it's worth bombing a school full of children. Maybe it was a mistake, but we meant well, and bombing Tehran is a good idea. That this is just all preposterous. But the entire world believes that America is half and half on this. half and half on Trump, half and half on COVID, half and half on Iran, half and half on Israel, half and half on pedophilia. And that is the actual demolition of the idea of America, because that is all things that have nothing to do with the separation of church and state and the free governance of people by free men. That's what this podcast show is all about. That's what this podcast show is all about. That's what this podcast show, I don't know, where did it go? The last show that he did, I don't understand. These two shows are pretty much saying that Jonathan Couey is right. Jonathan Couey is right. And then where'd he go? Where is he? Is he dead? Is he doing his Gaza movie finally? What's happening here? What about this guy, the Vincent Racaniello of Podcastology, saying that Candace Owens is the most dangerous person in media? But there's a guy out there named Mark Kulak who's clearly shown that Candace Owens has got to be an actor. Her whole timeline suggests that she's just a recruited actor. Somebody who said, please give me a job. She's no different than Nick Fuentes. She's no different than Soph. She's no different than Dave Rubin or this is like a wannabe Brett Weinstein here. And so these people are all examples of how the podcast theater is a trap. And, you know, I could update this with new people all the time watching. And so these are the people that I still bring to your attention. One of the interesting things that I saw over the course of the week that I've had off or so is MS Now, which used to be MSN, has a podcast, and they were discussing something really interesting with this comedian who apparently used to be friends with this comedian who, you know, is married to this comedian. And so let's just see the story that she talks about here and see if it will shed any light on things.
The perfect fodder for a podcast. And I wonder what it's been like to see her take, you know, such a public stage inside the MAGA movement as someone that you worked with and obviously have been friends with.
So remember, that other comedian had a podcast with her, and they used to talk about all kinds of crazy shit right before the pandemic. Interesting, right? Ready?
It's been very strange. I had a video pop up. You know, your phone likes to remind you. A video popped up of I mean, Cheryl and I were very drawn to each other just with nonsense and silliness, and we would have the deepest, hardest laughs. And this video popped up a couple of weeks ago of when we were when we had our podcast, we were doing a streaming episode and doing shots and slapping each other in the face with tortillas. And I was just looking at it going, man, you know, like that was just 3 years ago. And, but, you know. 3 years ago. So it's actually after the pandemic started, she was still doing a podcast with Cheryl Hines, but can't figure out what happened. It's almost like she can't imagine that somebody would be scripted in this way on a national security basis. It's actually a pretty hard thing for most Americans and most people that use social media to imagine. But it is the one thing that everyone needs to be able to imagine and understand. And specifically, it is the one thing you need to teach your kids to understand. That people, if paid enough, if they feel connected to something older than the United States, if they feel connected to something more powerful than whatever the United States is, then they will definitely allow their likeness or even themselves to be scripted on social media. And this woman doesn't want to accept that because it's never been a possibility presented to her before. But if you presented this possibility to her, it might immediately snap into parsimony, like in the way that a really good puzzle piece just kind of falls in. And then she would be like, wow.
Actually, I don't have any questions about Cheryl anymore because I understand that she's from the same improv club as Joy Behar. I understand that she does improvisational acting. I understand that she did it with Larry David, who's connected to Steve Bannon. And so maybe I misunderstood who she was as a person. She could get all the way there. Listen carefully.
My friendship with her predated Bobby, and there were things that he thought and felt that I didn't agree with, and but it wasn't, he didn't have the platform that he got during the pandemic. And I think that I needed to stop doing the podcast because it was so ridiculous. It was so stupid, our show, that it was hard to be doing that when he was gaining momentum and speaking. People would interrupt my stand-up shows and yell that Bobby is crazy. And I was telling Cheryl, I said, I know it's a small percentage that pushes back online or yells out at shows, but I was like, man, this is not my world. I don't want to be a part of this. And
now, see, that's the part of it that's most disturbing, is that the vast majority of people don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to be involved in it. And that's the magic of the Maha movement. That's the magic of social media, because you can be part of the Maha movement and not understand that 70% of Americans think you're retarded. You can be part of the Maha movement and not understand that that directly associates you with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan as authoritative thinkers. You can be part of the Maha movement and think that you can choose your own adventure as far as I'm for these heroes but not these heroes, when in fact, if you are part of the Maha movement, you are part of the entire illusion that also has knock-on effects in its misrepresentation and genuine representation on the left, such that a Baskin-Robbins of realities is available to everyone with every little flavor. The Maha movement that is suspicious of Robert Malone but still believes in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a flavor you can buy. Just like I don't really have any stance on this, but I know Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a bad guy, but I like Cheryl is a stance, and it's an actual flavor that you can get in this stupid ice cream podcastology store. And that's the worst part about it. There's no progress here. Nobody's putting two and two together. Nobody's trying to understand this from a bigger picture perspective about why this would be. It's just, I guess Cheryl, really likes that muscle man and got really impressed when he swung from the chains. And so our friendship didn't matter anymore.
she was like, I understand, but she wanted to keep doing the podcast. And, but it just, I had to step away. But I loved her so much. And she wanted to bring her best friend, Rachel Harrison, to continue doing the show, which I was fine for them to do. And, but what was most upsetting to me was that we were in such opposing places, but I continued to reach out to her and send her love and support because I didn't know what was going on behind closed doors because
she continued to send her love and support. Now, I almost have sympathy for her because I also did that. I gave everybody the benefit of the doubt, even when they told me or publicly, called me scripted retarded, or what did he call me? No, he said chemtrail retarded. Sorry. Even when Kevin McKernan called me chemtrail retarded in his Substack, I still tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Even when he was on stage with Jessica Rose and Jessica Rose didn't say anything useful, I still tried to give her the benefit of the doubt for a long time because I just didn't think they understood. And so she gives her the benefit of the doubt, but listen carefully to the clue that she misses, that there is no benefit of the doubt to be given to Cheryl.
Things shifted very severely.
And she seemed to shift very dramatically.
Yes.
Publicly. I only see what's public. And
yes.
so
yes.
publicly she seemed to shift very dramatically.
Yeah. And she would respond very pleasantly. Thanks, lady. Oh, this means so much. And I love you and miss you and all of that. But then I realized one day she doesn't ever reach out to me anymore. She responds to me, but she doesn't reach out to me.
Does she respond to you, or does her publicist respond to you? Does her handler respond to you? Did they change phone numbers and you didn't even know it? All of these things are possible. And she won't even consider the possibility. But I would love her to consider the possibility that Cheryl Hines is part of a national security theater, and that her very likeness on social media, her interaction with people like her, is very carefully controlled. Because, of course, she's married to HHS secretary. She's got a lot of things on her mind. She's just not responding to people's texts all the time. Just like, Thomas Binder's probably not tweeting all the time, just like Robert Malone's not writing all those Substacks. But she thinks that Cheryl is just, responding to her without actually learning, without making any progress, without ever listening to what she's saying. Just says, "Oh, thanks, girl." It sounds so similar to what all these people did to me, including Thomas Binder. "Yeah, bro, how can I support you?"
Stop lying!
And I had to kind of shake myself out of denial that, oh, she's gone, and okay, I need to let this go. I need to let it go. But what was a bummer is there have been some interviews claiming that I just dumped her and just left her in the dust because of Bobby. But I was trying to...
It's not that dissimilar to what these people have done to me when I didn't take their role as the book guy. Then they just stopped talking to me. They just said that Jay's lost his mind, that Jay's just an idiot, that he calls everybody a traitor, and that's not fair. And that's very similar to saying that it's not fair to say that the Nazis are killing Jews. You should just bitch about the books and the free speech. No, there is a better way to say the truth, and I've been saying it for a long time. Mark Kulak has been saying it for a long time, and these people don't seem to be able to learn. And this woman seems to be vaguely aware that something isn't right, but she hasn't been able to, and she never will, of course, get to the point where she understands it's a national security theater. Just in case you're not aware, this is a Bush-Cheney staffer. Yes, she worked for Bush and Cheney's administration. This one right here. Just so you know, I know it's hard to remember all these things, but I remember all these things.
Be a friend to her, even though I didn't feel like I could continue with the podcast. But it's been very strange, and I think I've moved past the confusion and sadness.
I've tried to rewire my brain for 9 years to the Trump era to understand what you're talking about. I've really tried to understand both paths of someone you love, taking on a prominent role in a movement that you think threatens people you love or your own family.
I know it threatens people I love.
So she knows that the Maha movement threatens people that she loves. So this is a pretty impressive place to be. If you think that people's lives are at stake and the only thing you can do is podcast, it's almost like going on, I don't know, Democracy Now! As a retired general and saying that the worst war crimes since the Nazis are currently being committed by this administration, but the only thing you have to do is podcast. You have no one to call. You were in 2 administrations before this, but you have nobody to call, so you're podcasting with Democracy Now! And that's all you can do, because the worst war crimes in history are being committed by your country, but you can't do anything about it. You got nobody to call, so you're just podcasting. That's just the way it is nowadays. The only thing we can do is try to get the word out on social media. It's really bad, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what to tell you. It's really bad, because this is the majority of Americans that think this and believe this, which is that Donald Trump is a independent agent, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an independent agent, that she's an independent agent, and they've all by themselves fallen for these lies, and it's really hard to understand why they fall for all these lies. Well, I find it very easy to understand. It's all one malevolent script.
You know, it's like that's where it's like it goes beyond like I think it could. I know it does. I know it does.
I mean, what you described so thoughtfully and carefully is this thing that my brain just cannot wire itself to understand and make sense of what happens to people who you thought you knew. And the idea that the two sides are now, their value proposition is totally divorced one from the other does feel like a fracture that isn't just about any one person in your life or any one person in my life. It feels like this rupture.
It's a rupture created by a military exercise on social media, a military theater on social media. It's not by accident. It's not because social media wants to keep you on their platforms. It's not because there are a lot of ads being sold by Joe Rogan. It's not because of any of those things. It's because it is a malevolently designed theater. Both sides are exactly complementary on purpose. And once you fall for one side, you are in a bubble which prevents you from seeing the ridiculousness of your own bubble. And they are in the same kind of bubble. It's just that they have more friends in their bubble. There are more Americans in this bubble than in the conservative bubble. But both bubbles are stupid because they both believe in the same mythologies about pedophilia controlling America and America being controlled by the Jews and Satanists, and America is now bombing Iran because I guess that's what we do. And there's nothing we can do about it because all we can do is podcast or vote.
Stop lying!
It's not that simple. We are trapped. Your relatives are trapped by podcast actors like these two. And if anybody is more trapped, it is actually him than it is her. Because he has been manipulated since he was 14 years old. And if you don't believe in that basic premise, you definitely don't belong here.
In our country. And I wonder if you feel like you can see how we knit it back together.
We knit it back together by accepting that we are both wrong, that we are both fooled. That the myths that we share is how we bring them together. The myths of immunization, the myths of realpolitik, the myths of the Judeo-Christian history of World War II and beyond. All of these myths, the myths of fiat currency and banking, the myths of everything that we share is how we bring this together. So that we all realize collectively that because what we thought about them was false doesn't make what we are as false. It doesn't make America, the idea, false. It makes the execution of it sabotaged. It makes it pretty impressive that the idea was so good it took 250 years and 3 generations in order to get to where we are, where it's almost destroyed in our own minds. That is the real American history that I'm very excited to share with you. This podcast, this broadcast, this work. That's what this is. This is real work. This is not a podcast. This is a podcast.
Wouldn't that be amazing if I had the answer to to fix that?
Or it's like if we were like marketers.
Not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lights of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the revolution will be live. This is a live show coming to you from the back of my garage in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Good to see you. That song is by Gil Scott-Heron. It is called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised from the album Pieces of a Man. It's one of a number of songs off of that album that will just blow your mind that you probably never heard. Podcasters are not real people. A podcaster has no expertise that they bring to bear and believes everyone they meet. A podcaster cannot make progress over time because a podcaster is always learning new things. And a podcaster believes in their sponsors' products more than their own judgment on reality. I don't know what to tell you other than we are here and we are crushing it right now because we are making progress that they are not. And that is how you can see that you and your children are still trapped in a social media theater. If you're still using social media to figure out what's happening, you are already lost. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to announce one more time that the live event is official and all expenses are already taken care of, which means that this will go on. It will happen. So if you want to be a part of it, either virtually or in person, the opportunity will be there. It is August 21st, 22nd, 23rd. There are preparations being made for there to be one guest speaker by the name of Mark Kulak. And in addition to that, there are preparations being made for an event before on the August 20th, as I understand it, that will include his own business and biznatch, which of course you can go to his website, Housatonic ITS, Housatoniclive.live, Housatonicits.live. I think, but you can find it. That's not that hard. And when you find it, you will see that this man has put in years of work trying to catalog the human relationships between the people and the ideas. Without his work, I just simply wouldn't have gotten as far as I've gotten. And I certainly wouldn't have Joshua Lederberg's picture at the middle of this graphic if it wasn't for his work. So shout out to Housatonic Live in the chat today. Good to see you there, sir. This is a stream coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you want to find a way to support the stream, please go to GigaOhmBiological.com and find a way to do so. You can also send an email to GigaOhmHQ@proton.me, and my wife will send you a notification of what I'm doing and what I'm up to. You will also find a schedule, GigaOhmBiological.com, that I intend to follow starting next week on Monday, including the start times. I don't know if that's going to happen, But right now, I officially am saying to you live that I intend to follow that schedule as it stands on the website. That's 5 days a week. I hope you will be surprised at my ability to do so. I want to move on a little bit and give you an idea of some other things that I'm noticing, and I just want to call your attention to something that that you may not have seen before or may have forgotten. This is a movie. If you are an adult, I don't necessarily would recommend this to all kids because there are some interesting themes in the movie. But overall, I find it an incredibly entertaining movie. At least I did at the time when I first saw it and several times after. The movie is called Chasing Amy. And in the beginning of the movie, there is a staged comic book meeting where one of their fellow comic book artists is playing a character on stage of a very hardcore militant black man who is really fighting for black justice and writing a comic about a black hero, a civil rights hero or something, superhero like that. And his fellow comic book drawers and writers come into the audience and interact with him in a way that allows him to be his character. And the people in the room think that he's just being his character, reacting to these random people in the audience, when in fact it's him playing a character. He's actually a gay man, a gay black man, not a militant, hardcore, screaming dude, talking like he is. But then his friends are in the audience egging this character on. And so this is a wonderful example from film about how social media and the actors on it create a drama that makes you think that something real is happening when in fact it's not.
For years in this industry, whenever an African-American character, hero or villain, was introduced, usually by white artists and writers, they got slapped with racist names that singled them out as Negroes. Now,
I thought that was my reverb. That's why I was fooling around over here. It's actually in the video, sorry.
My book, White Hating Coon, don't have none of that bullshit. The hero's name is Maliqua, and he's a descendant from the black tribe that established the first society on the planet, while all you European motherfuckers were still hiding in caves and shit, all terrified of the sun. He's a strong role model that a young black reader can look up to. Because I'm here to tell you, the chickens is coming home to roost, y'all. The black man's no longer going to play the minstrel in the medium of comics and sci-fi fantasy. We keeping it real. And we gonna get respect by any means necessary.
Come on, that's a bunch of horse shit. Endo Calrissian was a black guy, you know. He got to fly the Millennium Falcon. What's the matter with you?
Who said that?
I did. Lando Calrissian is a positive role model in the realm of science fiction fantasy.
Oh, fuck Lando Calrissian, Uncle Tom, nigga. Always some white boy gotta invoke the Holy Trilogy. Bust this. Those movies are about how the white man keeps the brother man down, even in a galaxy far, far away. Check this shit. You got cracker farm boy Luke Skywalker, Nazi poster boy, blonde hair, blue eyes. And then you got Darth Vader, the blackest brother in the galaxy, Nubian god.
What's a Nubian?
Shut the fuck up. Now, Vader, he's a spiritual brother, you know, down with the Force and all that good shit. Then there's Cracker, Skywalker. Gets his hands on a lightsaber, and the boy decides he's gonna run the fucking universe. Gets a whole clan of whites together. And they gonna bust up Vader's hood, the Death Star. Now what the fuck do you call that?
Intergalactic Civil War?
Gentrification! They gonna drive out the black element to make the galaxy, quote, unquote, safe for white folks. And Jedi's the most insulting installment. Because Vader's beautiful black visage is sullied when he pulls off his mask to reveal a feeble, crusty old white man. They trying to tell us that deep inside, we all wants to be white.
Well, isn't that true?
Now, I want you to see the comedy here, right? Because I am suggesting to you that that's what the health freedom movement does. That's what Tucker Carlson is opposed to, opposing Donald Trump or calling Steve Bannon a traitor or whatever. That's all that is. Public is a stage. After this, these four people are going to go out for drinks and play skee ball together and talk about their gay marriages and sing karaoke together. But together, they sell comic books by playing characters on stage and helping them do it, helping each other do it. Do you see it? I know that this is a rudimentary example, but it is precisely what social media leaves you open to, in the same way that going to this comic book meeting would have left you open to being bamboozled into believing this guy was a gun-toting crazy person. I better go buy more of his comic books before they're not available anymore. So by being at this meeting, you made yourself vulnerable to the actors on stage. Just by going to the theater show, you made yourself vulnerable to the actors on stage. Just by going to the comedy club, you made yourself vulnerable to the comedian on stage. And by going on social media, you have made yourself vulnerable to all the actors on stage. It has nothing to do with AI. It has to do with the actors. There's no AI here. There's no AI in the comic books. There's no AI on the wall. There's no AI in the brochures. This is just actors agreeing to work together to fool a room full of people into believing that that very soft, pleasurable gay man is actually a raging black crazy person. Just like they convinced you that Robert Malone is a whistleblower and that Jessica Rose is a whistleblower and Kevin McKernan is a whistleblower and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a real independent agent. Beautiful, I say. Beautiful, I say. Beautiful. And so an evening with Aaron Seary at the Trump Kennedy Center in March next week with a VIP package that includes a book is the same kind. If you go there and watch the actor on stage, you make yourself vulnerable to the actor on stage, and you make yourself vulnerable to the working assumptions offered by that actor. This is no different. This is no different than social media. It's just in person. And he is scum. Aaron Seary is one of the worst Americans alive. That's for sure. He's much worse than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's much worse than Del Bigtree. This is a professional lying as a professional, which is the utmost in scum. It's not a naive person. These are naive people. This girl, for example, is a naive person. She's doing the podcast that she's been scripted to do.
At the time I'm recording this video, Israel has just struck Iran, and the United States is almost certainly...
I showed you this girl like 6 or 8 months ago, and there's no way to explain her meteoric rise in popularity, nor is there any way to explain her reasoning for being and thinking who she is. She has no previous expertise that she's bringing to the table here. She has no life experience that she's acting on and using as a foundation for her interpretation of current events. There's nothing like that. As far as we know, the only professional experience she has is as a barista.
right behind them. But I need you to focus, okay? Because today, the same day that those missiles hit...
Focus? Who says stay focused?
Oracle has quietly announced that the U.S. government has just authorized it.
You can see in her eyes that she's reading. So again, we're supposed to believe that she wrote this script on her own accord because these are her ideas that she desperately wants to get out. And she thinks the way to do it is to podcast.
Stop lying!
That's just stupid. She's too young to have anything to say, much less useful about how Oracle is using our data or why they would go to Iran to use Oracle for that. I mean, what?
Run generative AI on federal government data. Your data and my data. The contract is titled FedRAMP High with a DISA impact level of 5.
It's just absurd. She's an absurd character. Once you see that she doesn't have the the requisite expertise, the requisite experience as an adult or a professional to do anything remotely relative to interpreting reality or trying to give you her spin on things. It's just stupid. That's all you need to see. It's not that she's a bad guy. She's just an actor doing what she's paid to do, reading what she's paid to read. That's it. In exactly the same manner that she's been directed to read it.
It means that Oracle can now run artificial intelligence.
If we go to the next example of a podcast, it's pretty remarkable. This dude was promoted first because he was shocking his dog. Now he's like promoted by somebody else on YouTube because this guy gets hundreds of thousands of views and, more importantly, millions of followers. More importantly, he streams for hours. But again, this is
Ladies
a guy...
and gentlemen, Congressman Ro Khanna is...
This is a guy with no professional expertise, no life experience that he brings to the table, no resume of relevance. He's just a guy who talks in a microphone with a bunch of shit in the background. And who did he have on his thing? Is it his friend? Is it somebody that he knows? Is it somebody that he's especially interested in talking to? No, it's an Indian agent.
Here. Welcome to the broadcast. This time, I don't know where you're at right now. There's a lot of snow behind you, and I know you're not in San Francisco. Where are you at, Ro Khanna?
I was at Dartmouth doing a town hall. I was at Stanford last week on AI, and so Dartmouth also was key in developing AI. So
I would go so far as to say that this guy has been training for years not to talk like an Indian.
We're doing a town hall with students, packed house on the Epstein class and AI. Of course, Iran came up a lot.
Yeah, I actually saw in one of your town halls, there were a bunch of constituents that you were addressing that tried to tell you, like, no, we have to do regime change in Iran, as a matter of fact, because the Iranian government has been incredibly repressive. Now, that is true. The Iranian government has been incredibly repressive in dealing with their own domestic affairs and in putting down any sort of like resistance movements. Having said that, however, your answer was pretty decent, where you talked about how American intervention is not going to help the Iranian population. And unfortunately, only a couple short days after, we are now seeing that the American and Israeli response is not helpful at all. America has now, since that incident, America and Israel have been bombing Iran. Iran has been retaliating. Where are you at now on this issue?
Well, Thomas Massie and I are introducing the war powers.
Thomas Massie and I are introducing an act, and at the same time, today, there's a little short of Kim Iverson saying that Massie and Ro Khanna should run for president in 2028. Massie, you know, the guy who's got like a documentary about homesteading, like Robert Malone has a documentary about homesteading. You know, Thomas Massie, the guy who's made no progress throughout the entire pandemic on anything. Yeah, that Thomas Massie. It's bad, ladies and gentlemen. It's really bad.
Resolution to stop this war. I mean, the reality is it's not just unconstitutional. It hasn't worked. It didn't work when we went after Gaddafi. It led to 6 years of civil war in Libya. And people say, oh, Ro, is it a partisan thing against Donald Trump? No, I just told you something that President Obama did, who I admire in many ways, that I disagreed with. This didn't work when we took out Saddam Hussein. The taking out the leader is the easier part. I mean, the hard part is what
make sure that I'm very clear that there's really nobody but us arguing that Obama, Trump, Biden, Obama was one show. And it started with Obama. And it started with Obama giving rebates to car dealerships to take in the most reliable old analog cars that existed in America and brick them. That's one of the things that Obama did at the beginning of his first term, was to, as many as possible, destroy the most reliable, mechanically restorable engines and the spare parts for them in America. They actually paid used car mechanics to put silica inside of those engines and run them until they seized. You know, the sugar in the gas tanks trick? They actually did that. The government paid used car dealerships to destroy these magnificent old Jeep Cherokees and those kinds of engines that people could work on and rebuild in their garages with spare parts freely available. Obama, Trump, Biden, Obama is all one malevolent show in which Trump played a part both times on stage. That's it. They are not independent actors independently acting on their independent ideas. They are actors following one script. And this is one of them.
Comes next. And a lot of times the people within the regime look at what the United States did, and they use that to whip up a angry nationalism, and it leads to more killing and a worse outcome. So you have now a president, again, who promised to end these wars, to not get us into a regime change war, breaking his promise, spending billions of our dollars on aircraft carriers there, on strikes there, putting our troops at risk, and we don't know what's going to come next.
Yeah, and there is no day after plan, and that much is obviously clear. So
this is an idiot. Why would Ro Khanna be on a podcast with a video game commentator? Why would he be on a podcast with this guy unless it's just another stage, another aspect of the Lollapalooza of liars, and he's doing a tour just like Kevin McKernan did a tour in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, just like Robert Malone did a podcast tour in 21 and 22, just like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did podcast tours from 2020 on. None of these people are making any progress. None of these people have an expertise that they bring to the table. None of these people have life experience upon which they base their interpretation of reality. These people are just actors on a stage. They're useless, thoughtless voices in the wilderness. They're just ridiculous.
I want to ask you very directly, do you believe that getting Congress to vote for the War Powers Act will actually stop this administration, or do you feel as though this administration is going to continue doing whatever it wants to do regardless?
That's a high bar, because we've got to not only pass it, but the president's got to sign it, or we've got to have the votes to overturn.
Oh, so he's just admitting to you here that this would be all a show, and that all of the social media coverage and all the talk of the contents of the bill and all the talk about who's going to vote for it, it actually doesn't make any sense because they don't have the votes anyway, and Donald Trump doesn't have to sign it. It's almost kind of too stupid to even believe, right? But here he is just telling you that we're just doing it for show, and it's really just to get the word out that Massey and myself are the buddies, and we're the dudes. We're the Blues Brothers in this, or some shit like that.
His veto. Now, when Bernie Sanders and I passed the War Powers Act to help stop the war in Yemen, President Trump in his first term vetoed it, but he voluntarily suspended the refueling of Saudi planes.
So why didn't he do it with Bernie Sanders this time? Interesting, huh? Why doesn't he do it with Bernie this time? Why isn't Bernie in on this one? Why is it now Thomas Massey?
And by the way, Thomas Massey was involved in that as well. But that was the only time that the War Powers resolution has ever passed the House or the Senate, when Bernie and I did it.
It's not really worth our time to listen to this anymore. I think just his appearance on that ridiculous podcast should be enough. Just don't forget.
Undeclared wars are commonplace.
This is also another kind of podcast out there, another podcast actor by the name of Neapolitano or whatever his name is, with a intro and all this other crap about, who kind of patriot he is. Andrew Neapolitano. He had one of these podcast actors on his show as well.
What if sometimes to love your country, you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least?
And so he's talking about a revolution. He's talking about abolishing the government or something like that. What if Jefferson... This is ridiculous talk. It's ridiculous talk.
What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave?
Freedom!
What if
What a
freedom's greatest
joke.
hour of danger is now?
But this is, again, what a podcast does. It's a spell casting exercise. They're just trying to enchant the people that watch.
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2026. Professor Jeffrey Sachs joins us now. Professor Sachs, thank you very much for your time and for accommodating my schedule. Before we get to the ramifications of an undeclared war and the murder of a religious leader who was also the head of state, your thoughts, big picture.
I mean, just think how easy it would be if Iran called up America and said, hey, the Ayatollah is dead. Do you want to use that for anything? I want you to just think very carefully how easy it would be for a controlled regime in Iran to call up the necessary overclass partners and say, hey, the Ayatollah is dead. Do you want to use that for anything? Because that's the working assumption here. The working assumption is that we killed him, that otherwise he'd still be there, and that we did it with our bombs or the Israeli bombs or something like that. And we did it because we wanted to, and we knew where he was. We tracked his phone. But just think about flipping that around. And again, remember, we said the same thing with Charlie Kirk. We said the same thing with Donald Trump's ear, is that if you make the debate about something that didn't happen, then all the evidence is wrong. All the mystery solving exercises are harmless because you're trying to solve a mystery that isn't a mystery. And in this case, if we're trying to solve a mystery about a war in Iran, when really it's just a drama created on social media because there's a ruler change, it starts to get darker and darker. Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying that's a possibility that is not on anybody's radar. And instead, everybody on every podcast that's out there in the world is convinced that America's out of control, that Donald Trump is making decisions based on his friend Netanyahu, or that maybe the Epstein files are being covered up by this drama, or some combination of these above ideas, which is just absurd. The other idea is that this guy is just an independent actor who's trying to tell the truth too, but he has nobody to call, so he just goes on podcasts all the time. This guy who speaks in front of the Vatican and speaks in front of the United Nations has nobody to call. So he goes on all kinds of podcasts and just tells people, because that's all he can do. He's got nobody in his Rolodex worth calling.
On this Israeli and U.S. invasion of Iran?
I think Netanyahu confirmed what I've been saying for many, many years. He says, this is my dream come true for 40 years. I had put it at 30 years because he's been prime minister for 30 years. This is a long-term plan. This is a Mossad CIA plan for American control of the Middle East.
Sure it is.
Israel.
Sure it is. It's a CIA plan. Sure it is. That's ridiculous. So as I've shown you before, this is also ridiculous. These people are ridiculous because they're podcast actors, because these are not real people. Their track record shows you that. And I think that once you start seeing the Maha movement as a brief, complete glimpse into how it's done, and more importantly, how unwitting participants are recruited on stage, and more importantly, the Indian actors. Those were two Indian actors with a UK actor born in Egypt, who are now all at the FDA. These people are all frauds. They're all on some malevolent script that brought this Indian fraud to the head of the NIH and CDC, brought this Indian fraud to the head of CBER, brought this UK citizen to the head of the FDA, and brought a Turkish colonel to the head of Medicare and Medicaid, and brought this former addict who used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats to the head of HHS. Because Donald Trump is the answer to his 20 years of prayer. It's not real. It's absurd. It's not real because it's not real. It's fake. It sounds stupid because it's fake. America did not vote for this. Americans don't believe in this. It is a very small portion of extremely skilled social media users who believe that these people are real. The trouble is, it's not a small number of people using social media, and so the last thing I said is not true. Almost everybody in the West is using social media to try and figure it out, and that's why we're in big trouble. That's why we're in big trouble, because podcasts like Doom Scroll exist. And that's pretty crazy. I'm going to keep saying this over and over again because I think it's very profound. They have no expertise to bring to bear, and they believe everyone they meet. They make no progress because they're always learning new things, and they believe in their sponsors' products more than their own judgment in reality. Here's an example of a couple of these weird podcasts that shouldn't exist, like why does she only have 62? Why did she only start like 1 month ago? Why is she doing anything? But she was promoted on this Substack, on this podcast, which is also not really that old. Again, how old? 2 years old. This one, less than a year old. They all have way more subscribers than me. This one's only 2 years old. It's got 125,000. Mark's still at 6. This one's at 11,000 with 62 videos, but she's just doing great every Friday from 2 to 5 p.m. She's got Patreon and a usermag.com. But who is she? What professional expertise do either of these people bring to the stage to justify them being a podcast that you should listen to, other than the fact that they're obviously funded? They're not sacrificing anything. Nobody's going without piano lessons in these families in order for there to be a podcast in the house like we're doing in this house. Nobody's choosing between their family and trying to get the truth out on any of these podcasts. And me and my wife are regularly forced to choose as to whether we're still committed enough to this truth. Because there's no financial gain here. There is only loss. And I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. And that's because I'm not a fraud. I'm here for a reason. I've got a life of a track record of integrity, of growth as an adult, as a biologist, and as a thinker. And what I see here is real. These are real people. There she is right there. Taylor Lorenz, that one that I just showed you. Here's Emma Vigeland. Do you remember? Oh, Ro Khanna's right over there. Oh, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski. You know what's funny is that Kyle Kulinski, Crystal Ball, and Emma Vigeland have all recently, and this woman, have all done shows about that Professor Zhang from Predictive History. They've all had him on in like the last week, all telling us about the Iran war and how this Chinese guy predicted it on his YouTube channel, that it would be a useless thing. This is the girl, remember, that a couple weeks ago, she's a co-host of The Majority Report with a scripted clown who used to work directly with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. before the pandemic. Yep. And she was now recently on a podcast where she was saying, yeah, I guess it's a lab leak. Oh, you should send me some papers. Maybe I believe it. Ro Khanna. See Ro Khanna over there? So let's just listen quick.
People that are not bound by nation states and are not bound by patriotism in the slightest. They use patriotism cynically to achieve their ends. But Peter Thiel has spoken about this. I mean, in those Epstein emails, he said that 0% interest rates were too high, which means they really.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, they see law like.
So she has a SAG card. She is an actor. She has no requisite expertise to be talking the way that she's talking, other than being on a podcast. She has done nothing with her life. She's planted no trees under whose shade she will not shelter. She has built nothing. She has nothing to teach you. She just has an opinion because she is a scripted LARPing actor who's paid to react to stuff in directed ways. This is not real. She might not understand how she's being used, but she is definitely not worth listening to, but you can hear it.
Domestic laws, even from nations as powerful as the United States, as like child's play and silly and things to be disregarded and worked around, and the Trump administration is aiding that.
Welcome to Doomscroll. I'm your host, Joshua Citarella. My guest is Emma Vigeland, a co-host of The Majority Report. Common sense liberals who would be telling me a few years ago that Pizzagate was a piece of misinformation that I should ignore are now like fully pilled on Ellen DeGeneres being the most prolific cannibal in Hollywood. Like shit is going fucking wild. What do you make of the explosion of all of this information and all the theories that are running around now? Is Jeffrey Epstein alive in Tel Aviv and eating human flesh? Like, where should we get a GPS on this guy?
I mean, look, I don't think he's alive. I think he was killed, though. I mean, that can't be controversial anymore.
You think they disappeared him with the flash of orange as him being carried away? It's not escaping. It's him being carried taken somewhere else?
In. I think that was somebody, or the flash of orange that they're referring to. One of the conflicting reports said that it was either an inmate, either the FBI or I'm forgetting.
Can you imagine that they're discussing the video of Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell right now? I mean, this is absurd. They will go on to discuss all kinds of things, including, if I can get my
exactly, there were two different
fallout stuff.
Out
the
caring about it. Who was paying any?
What degree?
People
they have a whole
gain momentum.
Maybe I have to go the people who are kind of holding the gates.
It's being the
has done so sacrifice out to
this kind.
I'm going to find it. Hold on.
The outside. It's in the
and there's
a whole graphic that
they also are saying that if he did leave, they switch.
Friend is the kind of people that they're the kind of people that the system has worked for. So they're very reticent to challenge it.
Actually, as a form
I can't find it.
In the scenes are Jeffrey and Ghislaine
Chan. It's being the pedophiles, and
I get the feeling that he was in it to art. There is
the sulfuric acid things see through. It would be very similar to the psyche of an individual.
Into the email, unimaginable. Wonder if there is some attempt to kind of, what is the Bannon phrase, muzzle velocity, like flood the zone, to try and fill everyone's news feed with these insane stories that we're not sure whether to parse, whether they're actually fact or fiction, or the sulfuric acid versus the Woody Allen is grinding up children's bones because it's a good source of fiber, like all this type of shit. I think that one is real, actually. But they gave us a searchable database. I think that is intentional because they're facilitating people piecing together narrative arcs and connecting dots and cherry picking different points of data. What is it?
As Mark said, it could have been simple as telling Jeffrey Epstein and his friends to send emails with these keywords and don't worry about why, you'll figure it out later. It's that simple. And yet here we are in a military fashion with all these people who have no expertise to bring to the table telling us they're certain that these are real stories and that's how the sausage is made.
Stop lying!
In this kind of Richard Doty disinformation sense that they are trying to direct attention away from right now.
I would imagine that it's Trump's connection to Epstein, but even more broadly than Trump, there are major...
He's searchable in there too, though.
Yes, he is, but we don't know what documents that include Trump that are not included in the searchable.
Somewhere in this podcast, which I won't be able to find, they show a great big graphic with all kinds of little bubbles on it, and each bubble is represented by a podcaster, with Joe Rogan being the biggest bubble, but all kinds of other little bubbles around. And they're continuing this discussion without actually saying anything about why. Why would there be those bubbles? And do those bubbles trap anybody that unwittingly could be trapped? Is anybody a victim of those bubbles? Is social media bad because those bubbles exist? Is social media responsible for any of those bubbles? And none of those questions will be asked here because, of course, Joe Rogan and all these other podcasters are all, by default, considered independent agents. They're not all scripted. They're all doing their own thing. They're all out of control. And so this is just what you get when there's chaos. That is an absurd working assumption under which she and her podcast hosts are clearly under. whether they understand the implications of it and how enslaved they are as a result, or whether they're carefully directed to construct that cognitive space, they're doing it. And it's dumb.
Well, items and what the redactions are. You saw that the DOJ is monitoring who, because they're making it very, very difficult for members of Congress to go in and search the documents themselves, and they're monitoring who they're searching for, including Pam Bondi opened her binder, I believe it was Bondi or another government official in the administration, showing they had Pramila Jayapal's search history that they saved, because they created this incredibly Byzantine process of trying to find this, go through the files.
What does that mean to her, I wonder? An incredibly Byzantine what? That's absurd. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to go to the gym because in order for me to get in enough shape to teach biology on the basketball court, I need to be on the basketball court quite regularly. Thank you very much for being here. It is crazy where we are. I'm gonna get out of here. I love you guys very, very much. Don't forget, there is a way out. We are having a course, and it is going to be wonderful. So I hope everybody will be there. I hope you will show up. I hope you will risk attending. I hope you will really risk attending. Thanks for being here, and I will see you again very soon. Thanks for being here. It's all right there for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's right there for the taking. The population pyramid is the way to understand what the problem they are managing and how they managed it is with murder and lies on social media. Thank you very much for being here. I hope to see you again 5 days a week starting next week on Monday. See you again soon for Jay's Neighborhood, Mr. Jay's Neighborhood, Monday. Thanks for being here, everybody. See you again soon.